Hello, everyone, and welcome to another VSM Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Krakowski, and I'm joined with Goran Vazovic.
How's it going, everybody?
We got Dario Classic here today.
How are you guys doing?
And we have a special guest. We have Matt Halley from cookiecart.org.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for stopping by.
Thanks for coming, Matt.
So Matt is the director, right?
Yep.
Of cookiecart.org, which is a nonprofit in the Twin Cities area. I think Dario knows him, and they have some contact, but it's a really interesting company. I did some reading on it. I know Goran did some reading on it as well.
Right, yeah. I know it's not, maybe directly related to real estate, but it's an organization that I think VSM and now KPS is looking to maybe partner up, volunteer, and also, make contributions to because it's in our backyard, but also what they do and what they stand for. So if you don't mind, Matt, if you want to just kind of let our listeners know what Cookie Cart organization is all about. What you guys do.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So Cookie Cart is actually a youth development program. We started and are currently only in North Minneapolis, but we exist to teach life, leadership, and employment skills to young people, disenfranchised young people currently in the near north neighborhood of Minneapolis. And we do that in a wholesale and retail bakery setting. So what that translates to practically is this year Cookie Cart will provide a first paid job experience for 200 15 to 18-year-olds. And they will do everything you would imagine in a wholesale retail bakery setting in terms of production. They also learn customer service. They learn how to write a resume, really preparing them for life and leadership.
So when you say they learn all these additional skills too, is there a little bit more mentoring involved than there would be in a typical first job?
There is. There's a lot of informal mentoring that goes on. Both through volunteers that come in from different corporate groups, from different church groups, from our youth work staff that are the direct supervisors of the kids. But we also have a really robust classroom-based training.
Oh, okay.
So in addition to the bakery, kids also spend about 50 hours in the classroom learning skills that build upon what the practical experience that they're having in the bakery.
Okay.
Is this a classroom located in the same structure in the bakery, or is it outside?
It is. It
Okay.
is. So, Cookie Cart's facility is sort of unique in that we've got this commercial kitchen, and then we've got classroom space, and then we've got administrative offices.
And that's both in North Minneapolis. I saw the plans for the St. Paul one, and I know that one definitely has. The North Minneapolis one does as well.
It absolutely does.
Nice.
Yeah. And from the real estate side, it's an interesting challenge to find, because we also have a cafe, a small 12-seat cafe, where you can come get cookies and milk, cup of coffee.
Oh, nice.
So we want to be on a commercial corridor, really important to our business model. So walk-ins are welcome, and we're a nice amenity for the community. But we also need all this space. So finding the right size space, and our building in St. Paul is 10,000 square feet right on a commercial corridor, has been a bit of a challenge.
Yeah,
but we found it.
So how big is your current structure in North Minneapolis? How big is that building?
It's about 13,000 square feet.
About 13,000
on
square
3 floors. So this new one is 10,000 on 2 floors. So in some ways, the configuration is quite a bit more practical for us in St. Paul.
Nice.
Gotcha. I've always been curious as far as the nonprofit business model, or how that it incorporates with what you do. How do you specifically in your case, you have one aspect where you're raising funds to be able to have a business that produces income that would then fund the organization. So you want to talk a little bit more about that, just because I don't know, and I'm sure not many of our listeners know. How do you kind of work that into the mix?
Yeah. It is a little bit unique with Cookie Cart, not completely unique because social enterprises, and that's sort of the class of nonprofit organization we are. We're a social enterprise, are getting quite popular. But we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, which means people can make contributions to us tax deductible. And that includes being able to get grants from corporations and community foundations and doing fundraising events. And that's the traditional nonprofit organization model. You get grants and you get gifts to run your operation.
So when the people donate, do they get something that they use to file with their taxes from you guys? Or?
Yeah, a contribution letter always comes with it, and it states that no goods or services were exchanged for that. So that's a tax letter, standard tax letter. But what makes Cookie Cart unique, or a little bit unique, is that we also have this source of earned income, the cookies. And while our focus has always been on the youth programs, and the cookies are sort of incidental, it's like, I like to say that the cookies are a byproduct of a really cool youth development program.
Yeah.
So our organizational focus and energy is on the kids. If we're doing that really well, we get some great cookies out of it. But over time, we've been so successful that those cookies sales, the portion of our revenue has increased over the years. So now it's a very important part of our revenue mix. In fact, a third of our organization's revenue comes from those cookie sales.
Oh, great.
So this year we're a $1.5 million organization, and we'll sell $500,000 worth of cookies throughout the Twin Cities metro.
That's great.
Cool. And that's just one location.
And that's one location.
So your main way to drive sales revenue is really just through that brick and mortar location you have in North Minneapolis. Is there another way online or?
Yeah, we have a web presence and get lots of web-based orders. We actually deliver throughout the Twin Cities metro, so we have one full-time delivery driver. And then on seasons like the holidays, we also work with several courier services. And over the last couple of years, we've also started shipping for our customers throughout the country and even internationally.
Oh, wow. Nice.
That's pretty cool.
That's some reach.
So you guys started roughly about 28 years ago.
Yeah.
Was the concept that you have right now always kind of the model that you were gonna, or did you mentioned like cookies kind of just came up, and how did that all start?
Were cookies in the mix the entire time, or was it something else in the beginning?
The cookies were always there. So really great story about how Cookie Cart started. A nun from Iowa moved to North Minneapolis and lived by herself, and she started doing street outreach to North Minneapolis kids. And 28, 30 years ago is right when the Chicago gangs were starting to come into North Minneapolis and have a pretty active presence. And Sister Jean wanted to be an alternative to those negative influences on the street. So she would connect with these kids on the street, and she would invite them to her home after school, and she'd help them with homework. And eventually they needed some other activities to do, so they started baking cookies in her kitchen.
Wow.
Got it.
Yeah. Very, very cool woman.
She got grassroots as it gets.
It sure is. It sure is, and she got volunteers involved in it, and the idea took off. Got to the point where she would have 5 kids crowded in her kitchen and another 12 waiting out on the porch.
Yeah.
And one of the young people said, we've got some extra cookies. Can we sell some of them? She got one of her volunteers to build a cart and with bicycle wheels on it, and the kids would go out on the streets and they'd sell those cookies. So at that time, those were little kids, about 12, 13 years old, too young to legally work. So they were getting to just pocket the money and put some of the money back in the kitty so they could make more cookies. Yeah. Over the years, that idea of providing a safe space for kids, safe, positive adults for kids, positive activity for them to do, that's all remained the same. some of the wrappings around the idea, like now it's a first paid job experience.
Yeah.
So you have to be 14 or 15 to actually start working there, that we offer this classroom programming. Some of that has been added and evolved over time. And of course, with that, sort of the quality and volume of the cookie product as well.
Got it. What's kind of the path that people take? So now in the modern sense, when someone first thinks about entering this program and getting involved with Cookie Cart, how do they start? How do they come to you? And then, what's their first year like, or what's the process like for them?
Yeah, so we really set it up like a traditional job. So because we have been in the North Minneapolis community so long, we always have more kids coming to us than we can actually hire.
Okay.
In fact, a couple years ago, we would have 100 kids on payroll and a waiting list of 200 kids.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and that's without doing any employee recruitment. So when they come to us, the first thing that they do is get an application, and we tell them a lot of kids will send their brother or sister in, or they'll ask their mom or dad to go pick up an application for them. And our first rule is you have to come in. You have to learn how to make a first impression. Right. They get the application, and it's a simple application. It's 2 sides of a page, but some things that will hang up a 15-year-old because if they've never thought of them before. Yeah. Where do they track down their social security number?
Right.
We ask for a couple references on it, and no, that can't be your mom. It needs to be an adult in your life that could speak to your ability to potentially be a good employee. You have a guidance counselor, a teacher, a friend's mom, maybe. So we help them through those tricky points on the application. And we encourage them to take that home, and we show them examples of really sloppy applications that we've had turned in. We actually have a stack of them that have been folded into teeny tiny pieces and unfolded again with lots of crossouts on them, ripped pages, and we say, we get some like this, and we show a really neat, tidy one, and we get a bunch like this. How do you think yours is going to stand out? So they get that idea, the importance of it being really neat in their presentation. Yeah. Then they get a call from the hiring manager, and they get an interview.
Okay. So how does someone make their application stand out? Just kind of what you said, is that an important part of your screening process as well, to make sure that everything's done, filled out correctly, thoroughly?
We emphasize that to them a lot more than the reality of it.
Okay.
Because for us, through the application and interview process, what we're really screening for through that process is motivation. We're looking for kids who want to be there. Obviously, we're not looking for people with experience.
Yeah.
We are looking for people with an attitude that they want to learn. They understand that it's not all cookies and fun, but it actually is a job. They're signing up not only to make cookies, but also to go out and be representatives of Cookie Cart. So really, as we're looking at those applications and as we're doing those interviews, they could say most anything, except when we ask the question, why do you want to be here? The only answer that they can come up with is, well, my PO told me I have to get a job.
Yeah.
Just not enough. It's just not enough. And if they have a PO who wants them to get a job, that's okay. You can still get a job. But that can't be the only reason that you want to come work for us.
That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dario has that same rule.
Yes, I do.
The learning process, it starts really before they even enter the organization, through their hiring and stuff. So how many staff members do you guys have currently?
So we have 14 adult staff members.
Okay.
And the bulk of those people are people who work directly with the young people, so overseeing the bakery and the scheduling of the youth and the classes that we teach. And then there's administrative people that some that a traditional bakery would need, but also unique administrative positions to a nonprofit organization. The folks that do the fundraising, the folks that go out and look at building the next cookie cart in St. Paul.
Right. So onto that is really, how did that kind of come up? Is that something that you're now spearheading, where you can replicate this successful process that you have decades of experience in, and why this part of town? Obviously we're a St. Paul-based real estate company, construction company, and so that's why I kind of piqued my interest right away. Is like, hey, this is something that it's going to be a great value. How did that all kind of come up?
Yeah.
And also, if you can add in there, is there a plan to get this in all neighborhoods in the Twin Cities, not just in North Minneapolis, East St. Paul? Because I think it could be beneficial for everyone to come through and for the youth to learn how to tackle real life problems and how to act in a job and what they're supposed to do, what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt that there's a great need for it. I'll answer that with the other part of the question, because it's surprisingly complex. But to answer your question about the decision to come to St. Paul, I mentioned that we were at a point in Minneapolis where we were turning away more kids than we were able to hire. So about 6 years ago, the organization set out a strategic growth plan to, first of all, respond to that need in Minneapolis. And in the nonprofit sector, since the cookies aren't earning us capital, we're pretty much lucky if we break even at the end of every year. Since we don't have capital to invest, we have to be very intentional about growing the organization. So we looked at what do we need to do to be able to serve more kids in North Minneapolis. And then right at that point, 6 years ago, we said, and then what other community could benefit from these services? And really, that came from a call from people in St. Paul, some elected officials, some people who work in other youth programs, some of the corporate foundations had said, specifically the foundation said, we would fund a program like this, but we fund the east side of the river. So have you thought about having a cookie cart over here? So the organization first set out to meet that need in Minneapolis with an eye on St. Paul would be next. And to do that, we did a $1.3 million renovation of our existing facility to reconfigure it.
Wow.
And we staffed up. So we have the current 14 adult staff, and that allowed us to go from 100 kids to 200 kids a year.
Nice.
And then we set out to work on the St. Paul project. It's been with lots of partnerships to look at the right neighborhood for it. And what we were really looking for is a community that had sort of similar demographics and frankly, challenges to North Minneapolis. Cookie Cart is never going to end up on near Cafe Latte.
Right.
It's not a place to be in the most affluent parts of town. Kids who live in that neighborhood can go work at Cafe Latte.
Right.
We're looking to be in a community where we can make a positive difference, both from an economic development perspective, by bringing life to the street, but most importantly by creating jobs for kids who don't have them available to them in the neighborhood.
And I think most importantly, the actual real life education and going beyond what they would receive in a traditional classroom or school. Because being an employer myself, as far as what we're seeing coming out of schools, colleges, let alone public schools, it's the core skills that you want somebody to have are not there. So that's what I really kind of like about your organization is they really teach you about product, about selling, buying, costs, customer service, just overall, general small business skills, but also entrepreneurial skills. I don't know how many other people or how many of your kids want to aspire to open their own business because of what they've been taught through your organization.
Yeah, that's right. Cookie Cart does teach all of that. But even before that, there's this set of soft skills that I think is where we really add a lot of value to a community. The ability to keep a work schedule, to show up on time, to know.
Huge part.
But
What's missing now?
The basics, but also the most important,
Right.
which a lot, again, you don't even have to be from a challenging neighborhood. You could be from anywhere.
Our industry is wrought with people showing up
Yes.
15, 20 minutes late for every appointment. It's insane.
Not knowing how to show up.
Yeah, exactly. So, and as you said, and I hear this a lot from some of our donors, I wish there was a program like this for my kids.
Right.
And these are people who are donating to the organization. But you take a community like the East Side where the families are often living in poverty. Maybe the parents are working 2 or 3 jobs to hold it together. Who's going to teach these young people these basic soft skills? So I think in neighborhoods like the East Side, it's critically important that somebody picks up that slack, that families just don't have the
Yeah,
capacity.
you guys are doing a great job. So is there kind of like when a person starts with you guys, how long does the process take? Is there like a graduation when they come in, or can they just kind of stick around and be in the program until they reach a certain age limit, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we try to keep the program pretty customized by what the young person needs. But if a young person comes in and is developmentally sort of average, they'd come in at 15, and we have about a year and a half worth of really good stuff to offer them. They will be able to learn all of the processes in the bakery, get through all the classroom experiences that we have, and be out representing Cookie Cart in the community, and then ultimately teaching those skills to new youth employees who come on. Once they've had a chance to do all of that, it's really our responsibility to support them into getting into something more traditional. And it's a way that our nonprofit social enterprise is really very different from a for-profit enterprise, that we invest all of this time and energy in training up our kids. Then when they get really productive, we tell them it's time to leave. and it's a challenge on the efficiency side of things from a cookie standpoint, but it's our mission. So that's why we do with 200 kids a year what traditional bakery with full-time bakers could probably do at 10 people.
Yeah.
How involved are you, is your organization involved after the program, or a kid has gone through a program, as far as building some kind of a strategy or a life plan for what happens after? Do you stay with them, when they go on to finish high school, college, maybe additional job placement? How involved do you guys stay?
Yeah, that's been a big point of discussion for our organization strategically, because resources are limited, staff capacity is limited, but that's incredibly important. And what we've landed on for the time being is the last third of their classroom work is all focused on what's next for them. So they leave us while they are still in high school.
Okay.
And they are building up their network, their professional network, their resume, these experiences that they have, so they're ready to go out to a more traditional job, and they come out with what we call the toolkit that has the key learnings that they've learned, and it has their resume, and they're ready to be updated, and some certificates that they've earned at Cookie Cart, and probably most importantly, the contact information for a bunch of adults that they've met along the way that becomes their professional network. So we see them into that next thing, and then we really don't have the ability to follow every kid after that next thing.
Right.
But we do have a really active alumni network, and encourage those kids to stay in touch with us. We bring them back to do graduation celebrations with the other kids who are graduating, have them come even teach some of our classes.
Oh,
Wow.
Nice.
So what? Now that you do have this alumni base, do you have any fun stories about them coming back, talking to the kids, and kind of getting to model themselves as the success story for the other kids?
Yeah, lots of them. Probably one of my favorites is there's a guy named Chris Pham who is, I think, 34 years old now, and he started off as a cookie cart kid with Sister Jean back in the day.
One of the originals.
One of the early ones, yeah. And I connected with him about 6 years ago after he was an adult, and he is working for one of the big law firms in downtown Minneapolis, Lundquist and Venom. He is an attorney there.
Oh, wow.
And he actually came full circle back to Cookie Cart to be on the board of directors. So was one of my bosses. I report to a volunteer board of directors, and Chris Pham came from being a Cookie Cart youth employee to being on our board of directors.
That's
and
really cool
what
to
a
see.
great role model he is for our kids.
Role model, success story. Do you, in a way of any type of a mentor or mentorship program, what if certain kids want to have that? Do you guys have the ability, or can you connect them with people that have gone through program who are now in the real world? 5, 6 years, 10 years after they've been through it. Is there some kind of a system for that?
Our focus tends to be connecting them more with board members and professionals that they met through the program. I think they connect with each other quite a bit through the alumni network, but we don't formally do that at this time.
Gotcha. Okay. So kind of to go into this new venture of opening one here in St. Paul, can you talk about, where you are in the process, decision to actually buy a piece of real estate versus lease it, and, where you see or what you guys still need to do to get the project done and, when it's scheduled to be done?
Yeah, sure. So first thing for us was finding the right community. So we narrowed it down to 4 neighborhoods. We actually said that a cookie cart could be equally beneficial to the Frogtown Central Corridor or the East Side. And when we narrowed it down to that point, we really just got focused on finding the right property for the project. And as I mentioned earlier, our needs are fairly unique for that because it's a pretty big footprint that we need on a commercial corridor. So we developed criteria. Needs to be in one of these 2 neighborhoods, needs to have this many square feet, needs to be where there are lots of kids needing positive activities, needs to have proximity to a high school. And we're about a mile away from Johnson High School over on the east side.
Nice.
Needs to be accessible by public transportation were our main criteria.
It's a good criteria.
It is. And it gave us very, very limited choices for what was available. Right. And again, I think the size of the facility and the overall condition were the biggest limiting points. There are a few other bigger properties over on Payne and Arcade, but in really rough shape. So we actually did, we walked the streets and, we did traditional property search through the real estate agent. But we ended up finding our property by walking the streets and finding a place that had a for lease sign on it, a vacant grocery store. It started off as an Applebaum's grocery store in the 1950s. It's 946 Payne Avenue. And it's a very solid structure that hasn't had really anything done to it since it was originally built.
You get to make it your own now. Yeah.
We get to make it our own. So what we have is a blank slate, a big, solid, open building that is very conducive to building out what we need. But it needs things like all of the mechanicals. Mm-hmm. It needs a new roof. One of our biggest and most expensive challenges with it is it needs an elevator. Yep. And it's a building with a barreled roof. So there's real complexities with putting the elevator in there to make it accessible. And so our dry food storage can be in the lower level. it's the basement needs to be dry, and it's sort of hard to find a building that age where the basement is dry. So we have work to do that. So our process, not being real estate people ourselves, is really relying on our partners and experts to help us through identifying these issues. And go ahead.
I'm sorry. It takes me back to a question of, so you're talking about some really big build-outs, millions of dollars involved. Do you guys have somebody on staff that is a developer or a general contractor? How do you guys go about getting those budgets, and who's managing those projects?
Yeah, so we put together a team for the North Minneapolis project that we're using again for the St. Paul project because they were an amazing team. So the key players in that are, I have an owner's representative who really is sort of a coach and guide for me. So we're really, really lucky to have him, and he just charges us an hourly rate, and I use him as needed for big decisions and negotiations, really. We have a general contractor, Watson Forsberg, that did our project before, that just amazing to work with, and really understands Cookie Cart mission and gives us good value. And then architects, U+B Architecture is a small sort of boutique firm. So it's really nice this time to have that team pulled together, and they helped us. All of those folks helped us do due diligence on this building before we purchased it. When I saw it and I knew that it met those 5 criteria, there were still a lot of questions about, well, what's it going to cost to redo this? Yeah. So they did the architects did a preliminary design for us, and Dario, I think you've seen the plans for that preliminary design.
Looks really good.
Yeah, it's going to be a great facility. And then Watson Forsberg took that preliminary design, put some preliminary numbers on it. So what we know is that at this stage, the actual construction budget, the construction portion of the project, is about $1.6 million. Okay. And then other costs associated with it are the actual purchase of the building. It was a $400,000 building. All of the design and architectural fees and legal fees, and then the money that it costs to raise money. You put it all together, and it's a $3.2 million project.
Ooh, nice. So where are you now with has the project have you started? You bought the building.
Yep.
So, and you got the plans, you got everything, I'm guessing it's the money.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And as a nonprofit organization, we're fairly conservative in terms of risk.
Yep.
Because the resources that keep our organization going were given to us and trusted to us. So we don't go out and take wild risks. So while we're the social enterprise, we're conservative entrepreneurs. So the board has set a target that when we have 75% of the funds committed to the project, then we'll go ahead and finance the rest of it. And that assumes that we have some prospects for that last 25% coming through. So we just hit the $2.2 million mark out of the $3.2 million project, which is a huge milestone for us. We got $1 million to go. It's going to be a hard $1 million because now we've done all of the first part in the silent phase of the campaign, which is going to community and corporate foundations. We got to raise the last $1 million really from this community. So it's a lot of publicity for it. It's a lot of press.
Right.
So grateful to have this opportunity, and getting lots and lots of people to give $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 gifts to make up that last $1 million.
So now that we're talking about money, how do people give money to you guys? What is the process? Where can they go? Where can they send it? Who do they need to contact?
Yeah, well, you can always give through Cookie Cart's website at cookiecart.org. we accept gifts most any way that they can be given. We for larger gifts, we accept stock transfers. And our favorite way to get gifts is in checks, because if we go through the website or credit cards, other people get a portion of it. They're tax deductible. The gifts are tax deductible. And at this point, what's most powerful and most important for Cookie Cart, even more than the cash, is pledges to the project. So we know that we're looking for big gifts. $5,000 is a lot of money. $10,000 is even more. So pledges are as good for us and our board as cash at this point. So if somebody wants to say, hey, I'm in this for $10,000 and I'm going to make that gift over a 5-year pledge, we accept pledges. And that's a very powerful tool that we have, which is sort of our equivalent of more traditional financing.
What's your mix then? Do you have people that have committed to, like, hey, when you're this far into the raising process, they've committed to $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and how does that? The people that have given you a check, you put it in some kind of a trust account, I'm assuming, and that money sits there. But for people like, hey, I'll give you $100,000, but I want to make sure that you're $100,000 close to your goal of raising the entire amount. And how does that process work? When you mentioned that you'll take the pledge, people basically just, sign a piece of paper with you guys. And from what I understand, you're doing this from a cash perspective. So you're not going, to finance the project, even though you have substantial amount of money that you can put down. Why is that, for example, just to get the project started?
Yeah, so we will finance against those pledges, and from a nonprofit auditing perspective, those pledges are something that we can count towards the campaign. And those pledges, especially depending on the source of the pledge, if it comes from, say, 3M company, they're going to be good for that pledge.
Right.
So those pledges really give us the confidence to say, yeah, we're going to be able to pay off any bridge financing that we take to get this project done, or loans that we take to get it done. Our goal is to not have any debt at the end of the project, and we may end up with some debt at the end of the project.
So right now, like you mentioned, you bought the building, but you're still raising the funds to get everything else going. So are there things happening now, or is it just on hold until you mentioned $1 more million is raised?
We actually have done some preliminary work on the building demo stuff. So we're really lucky to have some great volunteers working with us who know the construction side of things, and have some laborers available that have helped us get a head start on the demo. So we've demoed the whole main floor. We're getting ready to demo the lower level, and then next we're going to go ahead and make the investment in the abatement work, which is about $12,000 worth of abatement that needs to be done. And anytime we can do this stuff outside of the construction contract, it saves us quite a bit of money, because we can leverage a more flexible timeline. And if it doesn't go in the construction contract, then when it does go in the construction contract, there are a lot of other people who tack on 1% to that.
Right.
So why not, again, to keep things moving forward on the project, why not get a bank to commit on financing and still raise the money and have the project keep going, and then obviously when you raise the money you can just pay off whatever bank financing there is, so that way you don't lose the time. Well, I'm assuming there's some rules and regulations, and
it's that is the discussion that we are having right now. At what point do we say let's just go, and what is the risk of dragging out this campaign versus the risk of financing it before it's done? Now, first of all, it is much harder to get financing for a nonprofit organization because basically me or one of my board members would have to sign for that. The nonprofit entity can't really borrow money with traditional banks.
Yep.
That being being said, I think there are some creative ways to do it. But then the risk is, say we were to borrow the last $1 million of it, and say the campaign were not able to raise the last $1 million of it, then we add whatever the payments on that $1 million are to our annual operating expenses, and we just risk being in over our heads at that point.
Gotcha. So there obviously is an opportunity for you to do that. It's just a matter of mitigating the risk.
Risk tolerance, exactly.
And the potential. So
Yep.
if we're able to somehow, again, get the banking component and also focus raising the money, because I feel like, for people to I want to commit, but the project hasn't started yet, versus, it's already on the way, I'm just putting some more money in to get the finishing touches.
Yep.
So I feel like that would help in the effort to raise the actual money, so it would then be paid off. So that's something for us to think about. And like I said, this is just the beginning of our involvement.
Yeah.
And I think we can help you out in a big way. So I think it's gonna be a 2017 focus for us to get this done with you guys. So.
Wow. Well, what an honor, really. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to tell the story and to get to work with all of you on this.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for coming in and sharing the story.
Did you have any other questions, Daniel? I know you've been
No, that was fantastic. Yeah, that was a very good overview of what the company does, from kind of the origins, the inception, all the way up to what they're doing today and what they're going to do in the future.
So we will have all of the necessary links to basically the organization. You can actually see a lot of the information on their website when it comes to pictures and renderings of the new location in St. Paul. We'll link that in the podcast. Of course, cookiecart.org is the website. What else would you want our listeners to know and how they can be part of this?
Yeah, well, the best way to get a sense of Cookie Cart is right now is to come visit the Northside facility.
Perfect.
What's the location?
So it's 1119 West Broadway Avenue, and the 946 Payne Avenue location is going to be very much modeled after that. But more than the space, it's meeting the kids and feeling the energy in the bakery. So come over, get a cookie, get a cup of coffee, meet some of our youth employees. If you want to give me a call beforehand, I'd love to meet you and show you around the place. If there are people who are more interested in seeing the vacant building right now and really starting right away to think about what's going to happen on the east side, I'm also really happy to do tours of that. It is truly a dusty, empty shell right now.
That's all right.
But looking at the plans, you can really see the potential for this, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, I have the website pulled up right now, and you mentioned there's going to be a coffee shop, and what you guys have here as far as being rendered up, it looks really cool. It looks just like any other for-profit business. One question I didn't get to ask you, so I might as well just do it now. Is there a general kind of consensus or notion where the business itself would then fund the foundation, where you wouldn't have to rely on perpetual donorship all the time? And to what extent has your current location and those funds and whatever that you've created there is funding the new location, or is it just standalone?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
They really are standalone, although there are efficiencies that we get with having two sites. Like, they don't need two executive directors like me. They don't need two finance people. So there are efficiencies that we get, but they're going to stand alone. And I think that's partly because donors, it's mostly because donors give with the intent of supporting one community or another. Now, if there are donors that say, I just love what you're doing in Twin Cities, and they are supportive of it going to both sites, that's fine.
Yep.
And we welcome that. That's actually our favorite kind of gifts, without restrictions on it, but we really honor the restrictions.
Gotcha.
In terms of increasing sales to the point that we don't need to
or maybe not
fundraise,
need, but just rely on as much.
Yeah, it's a constant conversation that we have with the board of directors at a strategic level for the organization. And right now, 1/3 of our revenue comes from the cookie sales, and that we're planning the same for the St. Paul site. And the reason for that is really to keep the focus on the youth programming and not on the cookies. I like to say that in terms of a youth employment program, we're probably one of the most efficient, dynamic, innovative youth programs that you can ever find. In terms of purely cookie production, we're a very, very inefficient bakery. We've got all these teenagers coming in.
A lot of turnovers.
We're turning them over. We're training them, spending a lot of money on, because they're paid when they're in the classroom as well. So in that way, we're more of a traditional nonprofit organization, traditional youth program. So at this time, we feel like having 1/3 earned revenue allows us to keep our focus where it needs to be on the kid programs. Our fear is that if we drove too hard on the cookie sales, that kids might come to work and it's like scoop faster, package more orders, and not as much on those soft skills that we really value teaching.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, again, thanks again for coming. And if you want to sign us off, Daniel.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again. We really appreciate you being here and sharing your story with us. And hopefully our listeners out there are going to be able to help and move up this timeline now for this one East Side. Thanks so much. Have a good week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.